Did you know Sicilians weren't considered white when they came to America? Yup, Sicilians were once seen as black, Arab, or even not human. In 1891, 11 Sicilians were lynched in New Orleans because locals said they were too dark to be white. That's real American history. Sicilians had darker skin, spoke a different language, practiced weird customs, and came from a place closer to Africa than Rome. Some had North African and Arab ancestry. The US, some had North African and Arab ancestry. The US called them not fully European. But by 1940, Sicilians were suddenly white? Not because they changed, because America changed. They served in World War II, moved to suburbs, and started to blend in. The courts even ruled them legally white in naturalization cases. Sicilians weren't always accepted. They earned whiteness through war, work, and silence. But their ancestors, they were Mediterranean, multi-ethnic, and often racialized. So, did you know Sicilians were once seen as non-white? Were you taught that in school? Do you think Sicilians today are ethnically white or just legally white?
I'm staring at my collar, they're staring at me, at Josephine for who I am and what I'm worth.
I am a black Italian. I am a black Italian. I am a black Italian.
You know, deep down inside, I think you wish you were black. Laugh if you want to. You know, your hair is kinkier than mine. What does that mean? And you know what they say about dark Italians?
You see, Sicilians have black blood pumping through their hearts. And no, if you don't believe me, you can look it up. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago, you see, the Moors conquered Sicily. And the Moors are niggers. See, way back then, Sicilians were like wops from northern Italy. They all had blonde hair and blue eyes. But, well, then the Moors moved in there and, well, they changed the whole country.
All right, Shalom, Shalom, Akim. First and foremost, I'd like to start off by giving all glory, honor, and praises to the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahushai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, the blinders, the elders, and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well in sincerity and charity, peace and salutation to the Lord's elect, the hopeful elect, the 1/3. I'm the brother Yahweh Sabarak coming through with a quick lesson today through Spirit. Lord willing, I pray you find it edifying, exhorting. And, you know, the algorithm on Instagram was showing me, you know, that Sicilians and a lot of Southern Italians have, you know, so-called black DNA in them, and they were ruled by Moors. And listen, you know, this Israelite thing is not a black only thing. You know, they're like a lot of people make it out to be. You know, of course, the majority of the Israelites are, you know, so-called black Hispanics and Native Americans, but as well as that, you know, we have a lot of Israelite foreigners that, you know, may look like the heathen. You know, you might have an Israelite that might look like a so-called white man, that may look like a so-called China man, that may look like a so-called Japanese man, or Indian man, or Arab man, but their seed line stems back to Jacob. And we're going to break this down in these scriptures because there's a lot of Israelites and a lot of those stiff-necked, you know, individuals that want to basically pick and choose who they call an Israelite or not based off solely appearance, man. And that's going off, man. We got to break that down. Okay, we're going to break that down right now. And this is the first precept we're going to go into in Leviticus 26 and 33. And I will scatter you among the heathen and will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate and your cities waste. So, you know, as you can see, a lot of those Sicilian, you know, individuals, man, and I know a lot about them, man, because, you know, part of my family goes, you know, stems from that southern region of Italy. And a lot of that, you know, land was, you know, taken advantage of. You got people that were, you know, brought here to America and they were lynched, as you heard. That doesn't happen to a regular white person. You don't hear about regular white people getting lynched. Okay? So that right there is spiritual just in and of itself. But it says you're going to scatter among the heathen. So, you know, eventually with time, our people, Israelites, mixed in with these other foreign nations, man. They came, they conquered lands, and they mixed with their woman. You know, there's a lot of individuals going around and saying that, you know, they only mix with the black woman. That's not true, man. You know, you think our people, man, were just only mixing with black women, so-called black women? You know, they were on an island, and there was nothing other than, you know, so-called heathen woman. You think they're just going to stay and wait for a black woman to suddenly show up? No, man, they were dealing with them. And these women, these heathen women, absolutely loved Jake men. They were more superior. They were stronger. We're a stronger nation than the rest of these nations. Okay, right now, we're being, under captivity by Esau, Edom. But as a people, man, we're strong. We're resilient, man. We are superior, and it's plain and simple, man. We excel in everything, and that's, we're peculiar people, a royal priesthood. And we are the apple of his eye, the Lord's eye. So, this is a very important topic to speak about, man, and it actually interests me. Because I was being told by individuals when I first started to hear about Israelites and keeping the commandments. In the very beginning, I was told by, individuals from other ministries that, I wasn't an Israelite based off of just solely how I looked. They were just throwing titles at me. And I just knew that wasn't right, man. I just couldn't believe that. And the Spirit led me to Great Millstone, where I learned about the Israelite foreigners, man. And I was compelled to continue to learn and grow. And so why do you how about Shem Yahushai for these great men that, break down the scriptures, correctly and directly. They don't beat around the bush. They say things how it is, man. They break things down. They go deeper into it in the Strongs. And that's why it's so important to, be surrounded by wise men. Wear out the footsteps of thy elders, and so let's go into the next precept. This is Hosea 1:10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living God. So, it says that the Israelites are going to be so numerous. They're going to be scattered amongst the four corners of the earth like the sand of the sea. If you go walk on the seashore right now and you see all the sand there, okay, imagine how many individual grains of sand that is. That's going to be the amount of Israelites that are scattered. So don't think that it's just only, the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Of course, that's a majority of the Israelites, but our people are everywhere. Our people are everywhere. And how are you able to know that, man? Through the Spirit. They act a certain way, man. They're different than, the people that they've been scattered amongst. And even myself, man, as a child, the music that I would listen to, man, as a child, man, it wasn't like, what these other people listen to, man. Okay, it was just different. And I always knew, man, deep in my heart, I never felt like the label that was put upon me, man, by, this system. In Deuteronomy 4:27, and the Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, whether the Lord shall lead you, man. So the Lord's going to lead you out, into the understanding that you're an Israelite, if, he's truly dealing with you, and if you are, of the elect. Because a lot of our people are Israelites, but they don't hearken on to that. They don't want to believe that. The Israelite foreigners especially, I'm speaking for. Their family members and so-called friends, they don't want to believe that they're God's chosen people. They want to be stuck in that bondage, man. But for those that are, of the elect and that the Lord is dealing with, he's ultimately going to bring them to this truth one way or another. It's very beautiful how the Lord works, man. The path that he'll lay out for you in order to come into this truth, through certain brothers, through being a part of certain organizations and groups, congregations that were not preaching sound doctrine in order to bring you there, and that's why, there's elect that are scattered amongst these camps that are going off, and they just need to hear the right word, the right breakdowns, man, and the Lord ultimately will bring them out of that. That's why it's important to continue to speak about this and other topics as well. So this is the book of Nehemiah 1:8-9. Remember, I beseech thee that the word of thou commandest thy servant Moses, saying, if ye transgress, I will scatter you abroad amongst the nations. But if ye turn to me and keep my commandments and do them, though ye were cast out unto the othermost part of the heaven, yet I will gather them from thence, and I will bring them unto the place I have chosen to set my name there. So, because of the disobedience of our people, man, they wanted to, follow false idols and just go off in the sight of the Lord. he became very jealous, and he caused us to be scattered, and a lot of our people were, scattered amongst those heathens. And for all those people that want to say that your seed line gets washed away after a few generations, that's retarded. That makes no sense, man. So, we're gonna make this a couple of generations only, and then you suddenly don't become an Israelite. That doesn't make any sense at all. It's really stupid and low level thinking. Okay, and it's a lot of these Israelites that think this. I'm gonna call it out right now. That's not the truth, man. If your seed line stems back to Jacob, you're an Israelite, but through your father's seed line. Okay, it's all through your father's seed line, and through the father's seed line. Let me see if I could find this out right now. Scriptures that speak on lineage through father's seed line. I want to bring that out really quick to make a point. Let's see if it comes up. If ChatGPT brings this out. Okay. Yeah, Numbers. Okay. Numbers 1:18. And they assembled the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they declared their pedigrees after families by the house of their fathers, according to the number of their names, for 20 years old and upwards by their polls. So that's their fathers. So it's you are what your father is, not your mother. That's why when the Israelites went to these other nations, man, they dealt with these other women, and therefore they produce Israelite seed. And if you look at an apple tree, depending on wherever you put that apple tree in, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in Siberia, it's still an apple tree. It might change, the structure of its branches and leaves to adapt according to the elements and the vibration of the certain environment, the vibration, the elements, Salakia, the soil. But at the end of the day, it's still an apple seed. Citrus, a citrus, there's many different varieties of citrus that you can graft onto and cross-pollinate, but at the end of the day, it's a citrus. You can't go and graft the apple tree onto a citrus tree. It just won't fuse together. It will just eventually die out. So that doctrine of the Gentiles, the so-called heathens, being grafted onto the Israelites, it's not true. It's not true. It doesn't work that way. That's just a false doctrine. So when it's speaking about the so-called Gentiles, in the book of Romans, for example, they were speaking to the Israelite foreigners that were scattered amongst the heathen, not actual heathens that are like Edomites and Moabites. No, it was talking about actual Israelites. And that's why it's so important to get deeper into these scriptures, because there's other meanings to what you see, and there's so many different translations as well. That change things around, and that's why study to show thyself approved. And precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. So this is the book of Jeremiah 9:16. I will scatter them amongst the heathen, whom neither they know nor their fathers have known, and I will send a sword after them till I have consumed them. So even our forefathers, man, for those that are Israelite foreigners, you don't really they don't know where their heritage is from, but eventually with time, man, the Lord will wake up his elect and cause them to come to the knowledge and understanding. And that's why it's so important, man. It's just such a spiritual thing, man. We can't just judge based off of what you see on the outside, man. This is a very spiritual thing. 1 Samuel 16:7. But the Lord said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance or on the height of his stature, because I have refused them. For the Lord seeth not as a man seeth. For the man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. So it's a very carnal thing for these camps, man, that are just out preaching and on the microphone, and then they see a so-called white man walk by, and they yell out Edomite without even testing his spirit. You got to test people's spirits out, man, because that guy might be looking like an Edomite. He might look that type of way, but he's actually a Jake, and he acts like a Jake too, and he moves like a Jake. And then there's actually so-called black, individuals that are actually chocolate-covered Edomites. So we can never just solely judge off of appearance alone. This is spiritual. And, this is Romans 8:16. The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are children of Yahweh. So, one way or another, the Lord is dealing with you and you are his elect. He's going to, put it in your path. He's going to direct your steps to learn about this truth and receive it. And that's the beauty of this, man. That's the beauty of YouTube and the internet that we have right now. It's been a gift from the Lord. He created that in order for us to go out and preach this word, to the four corners of the earth. And it'll carry like the wind, this is John 3:8. The wind bloweth where it listeth, and thou hearest the sound thereof, but canst not tell where it comes from and whither it goeth. So is everyone that is born of the Spirit. So, the wind will blow and eventually, bring that person to the knowledge and understanding. And Luke 4:14-23, and the Lord saith unto the servant, go out unto the highways and hedges and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. So, we're supposed to call back the sheep that have been lost, man, and compel them to come in through these videos, through going out on the highways and hedges and preaching sound and true doctrine, breaking things down directly and correctly. And this is our reasonable service to do so, man. So we got to continue to push out these lessons and do the work, because our people are still out there, man. And as the time's progressing, man, we got to seal the elect, and once the elect is sealed, then that's it, man. The Lord's coming back, Ezekiel 20:23, I lifted up mine hand unto them also in the wilderness, that I would scatter them among the heathen and disperse them through the countries. So, you see that again, disperse them through the countries. Everywhere and anywhere, there's Israelites. Even in, so-called where Amalek is right now, there are few people that are Israelites there as well, amongst many, many heathens, in Elamites region, the so-called Indians. There's Jake there too. But they've taken on the customs of the heathen, man. So when you're around heathens, you're gonna eventually adapt to that environment and what they teach you. You're gonna conform to that brainwashing. But so this is Zechariah 7:14. But I scattered them with a whirlwind among all nations whom they knew not. Thus the land was desolate after them, that no man passed through or return, or they have laid pleasant land desolate. And this is Baruch 2:30-33. For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people, but in the land of their captivities they shall remember themselves, and they shall know that I am the Lord their God. For I will give them an heart and ears to hear, and they shall praise me in the land of their captivity, and think upon my name, and return from their stiff-necked and their wicked deeds, for they shall remember the way of their fathers, which sinned before the Lord. So, in a lot of these nations, man, the Philippines, Scotland, Ireland, the so-called, Southern Italians, from Napoli to Calabria to Bari to Sicily, most of them are Jake. Most of them are Jake, but they've been in captivity, man. They've done wickedness, man. They are stiff-necked. They want to follow that Catholic demon religion, false idols and statues, and because of that, man, the Lord blinded them. But for those that, like I said, are the elect, and they receive, they receive this knowledge and understanding. He'll allow their ears to hear, man. He'll give them a heart to repent and turn back and follow the Lord. And that's why it's so important to continuously preach sound doctrine. Don't be going off and following what you think is. Don't be just calling people Edomites either, man. You got to really test their spirit. You'll know an Edomite when you see one, man. If they have that bloodlust spirit and they absolutely have a hatred for our people, their forefathers, were slave owners, chances are they're Edomites, And for example, Caesar Nero, Trump, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, those are Edomites. And you could see it by their spirit and by the way they act. They're heartless people, They have no backbone. They're evil. Okay? So this is Deuteronomy 30:1-3. And it shall come to pass when these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before thee, thou shalt call them to mind among the nations, whether the Lord thy God hath driven thee, and shalt return unto the Lord thy God, and shalt obey his voice according to all I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thine heart and with all thy soul, then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion on thee, and return, gather thee from all the nations whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. The Lord scattered his people, but those that are his, man, of his elect, he's going to call back, and he's going to have compassion and mercy on them during these perilous times to come. Okay? So with that being said, I want to end the lesson here. Lord willing, I pray that it was edifying and exhorting, and that you got something out of it. With that being said, I want to give all glory, honor, and praises to the Heavenly Father and his only begotten Son, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakadash, the blindness, the elders and apostles, the great millstone who rule well and teach well. Peace and salutation unto the Lord's elect, the hopeful elect and 1/3. I'm the brother Yosap Barak, and to you I say